Caleb did not knock. He did not call my name. He just stepped out onto the porch and set my boxes down like they were overdue deliveries he wanted off his hands. I heard the thud before I even saw him. That dull sound of taped cardboard hitting concrete, and something inside me folded in on itself. "Eleanor," he said without looking at me. "These are all yours." My breath caught. "All of them," I whispered. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. His silence was the answer. I stepped closer. The air tight around my chest. My name was written across each box in his sharp handwriting. Kitchen. Clothes. Books. Guest room. Items I had quietly bought and left for my daughter Sienna and him. Over the years, things I thought made their home feel warmer. Things I thought made me feel included. Neighbors passed by on their morning walks. No one stopped, but I could feel their glances brushing my back. A mixture of pity and something colder curiosity disguised as politeness. I kept my eyes down, not trusting my face not to tremble. My phone vibrated. A simple buzz that felt like a knife. I unlocked the screen, and the message was waiting, clean and sharp as glass. "We need distance from you, Ku. Please stop contacting us completely." Just one sentence. No greeting, not even my name. Sienna's avatar stared back at me, my daughter, who used to fall asleep on my chest, whose hair I braided before school, whose college tuition I covered down to the last textbook. I felt my knees weaken. "Sienna sent this," I said aloud. Though no one was listening, Caleb finally looked at me, but there was nothing in his face. No shame, no conflict, just dismissal. "It's better this way," he said. "For everyone." I swallowed hard. "Did she ask you to put my things out?" "She said it needed to be done quickly," he replied. "We have a schedule for getting rid of me." I stared at him, waiting for something. A crack in his voice, a flicker of doubt. But Caleb was a man who treated people like columns on a spreadsheet, zeros and ones, profit and loss. I stepped back, phone still in my hand. My heart pounded, but my mind went strangely still, as if grief had cleared a straight, narrow path. I typed my reply slowly, carefully, choosing each word like it might be the last piece of ground I stood on. "Of course. I'll cancel my direct deposits first thing. And I thought I should let you know." My thumb hovered before I sent it. Then I pressed the screen. The moment the message went through, I felt something shift inside me. A quiet, steadying click, like a lock finally sliding into place. Caleb did not notice. Sienna would not either. But I did. I picked up the smallest box and held it close to my chest. The cardboard felt rough beneath my hands. But underneath that was something new, a thin thread of strength pulling tight. I turned away from the house that no longer held a place for me, and for the first time in years, I did not look back. I carried the smallest box into my apartment and set it beside the sofa. My hands were still trembling, but my mind kept drifting backward farther than I meant it to. The present felt too sharp to look at directly, so my mind took the long way around, back to where all of this really started. I raised Sienna alone from the time she was 4. Her father, Michael, left with a note and a promise he never kept. I worked double shifts at the elementary library, doing cataloging after hours, sometimes shelving books until my fingers ached. When Sienna needed new shoes, I skipped meals. When she wanted violin lessons, I picked up tutoring jobs on weekends. Every choice was simple back then. Whatever she needed, I found a way. Sienna used to look at me with those big, dark eyes and whisper, "It's just us." "Mama." I believed it. I built my whole world around it. I was still thinking about those early years when the phone buzzed again. Not Sienna, a promotional message. My shoulders eased, but only a little. The silence from her felt heavier the longer it stretched. I sat down and let my thoughts drift to the day she brought Caleb home. Sienna was 22, fresh out of college, flushed with excitement. Caleb wore a pressed shirt and a smile that never reached his eyes. "Mom, this is Caleb," she said, practically glowing. He shook my hand firmly, too firmly, and looked around my apartment like he was calculating square footage. "Nice place," he said. "Cozy." Sienna didn't notice the way his tone sharpened the word. I did. Back then, I told myself I was being overprotective. I wanted her to have someone. I wanted her to be chosen, cherished, adored. So I ignored the way Caleb always placed himself between us. Literally and figuratively. He took the seat beside her, not across. He answered questions meant for her. He made jokes about old-fashioned moms that Sienna laughed at, even when she saw my smile falter. "Mom, you worry too much," she'd say after he left. "Caleb loves that we're close." But the closeness began to thin like worn fabric. First, she stopped calling every morning. Then she skipped our Sunday walks. Then she asked if we could set boundaries. Though she couldn't explain what that meant exactly, "Caleb thinks we should have clearer lines," she said. "It's healthy." I swallowed my hurt and nodded. The mini twist hit me then, one of those moments I had buried so deep, I thought it belonged to someone else. It was during a family dinner at Caleb's parents' house. His mother made a comment about Eleanor being too involved. I laughed it off. But I looked at Sienna for support. She looked away and said, "Sometimes she means well, but she can be a lot." Caleb smirked. His mother nodded. I sat there pretending the words didn't cut straight through me. If Sienna noticed, she never said. Sitting alone in my silent apartment now, I realized the exile text wasn't the beginning. It was the final brick in a wall they'd been building for years. Every missed call, every skipped holiday, every moment Sienna didn't defend me. Every time she let Caleb speak for her, it all stacked neatly until there was no doorway left. I picked up the box again, just to ground myself. The tape peeled slightly under my fingertips, making a small tearing sound. Something tightened in my chest. Not grief exactly, but recognition. This didn't happen overnight. It didn't come out of nowhere. And if I had missed the signs leading here, what else had I let myself ignore? I sat on the edge of my couch, the box still unopened beside me, and let the weight of the past settle where my daughter's silence had left a widening ache. The memories didn't come softly, they came with numbers attached. The first time I paid one of Sienna's mortgage overages, she sounded embarrassed on the phone. "Mom, I'm so sorry just this month. Caleb's bonus got delayed. We're short by $300. Her voice shook. She was 26, newly married, trying so hard to build something that looked like security. I didn't hesitate. "I've got it," I told her. "Don't worry." When the overages kept coming $400, then $600, then once nearly $900, she didn't sound embarrassed anymore. She sounded expectant. "Mom, can you handle it, Mom? It's just this once. Mom, you understand how it is." Each time, I told myself I was helping. That's what love looked like, didn't it? I rubbed my hands together now, remembering how many times I repeated that lie to myself. Private school tuition was next. Sienna wanted her daughter, little June, my granddaughter, to attend a school across town with a good arts program. "The city schools are underfunded," she told me. "Caleb says the tuition is outrageous, but it's worth it. Mom, she needs opportunities." Caleb agreed with her. "Of course. It's an investment," he said. "Family should pitch in where they can." He said family, but he looked at me. The first year's tuition was nearly $14,000. I paid most of it. The second year, I paid half. By the third year, Sienna didn't even pretend to offer anything. "You know we're stretched thin," she would say. "You're retired. Mom, you have the time to help." I had the time, and I gave the money. Then came medical bills. Caleb sprained his back lifting equipment at work. Insurance will reimburse us. Sienna insisted. We just need to float it for now. The bill was almost $2,000. Insurance never reimbursed. Sienna never brought it up again. I whispered into the stillness of my living room. I kept covering everything, didn't I? Hearing my own voice made it real. The mini twist, the one memory I had shoved deepest, surfaced suddenly, like a bruise rising through skin. It was 2 years ago. I was sitting with a cup of tea when Caleb called. Not Sienna, but Caleb. Eleanor, I need a quick favor, he said. Just a bridge payment. My business account is locked for 24 hours, just a security check. Could I use your credit card? I'll return it immediately. I froze. For what amount? A small loan, he said casually. $2,500. I hesitated. And he added quickly, Sienna said you'd understand. It's family. Family. That word again. I gave him my card. He never mentioned it again. Now, sitting alone. The truth landed hard. I wasn't supporting them. I was enabling them. Not because I was wealthy, not because I was generous, but because they had learned exactly how to keep me useful. This wasn't kindness anymore. This wasn't love. This was dependency disguised as gratitude, wrapped in guilt, sharpened by expectation. And I had let it happen so quietly, for so long, that they believed I owed it to them. I leaned back, my heart tightening, echoing the same quiet thought that had been building all morning. How many times had I saved them? And at what point had they stopped saying thank you and started believing it was my duty? The number rose inside me like a tide I could no longer ignore. My phone rang late the next morning, sharp enough to cut through the quiet. I almost let it go to voicemail. I had barely slept, and my mind still felt bruised. But old habits die hard. So I answered. Is this Mrs. Eleanor Grant? A cheerful man asked. Yes, this is she. I'm calling to verify the updated information on your business utility account before we activate the new rate plan. I frowned. Your business utility account, he repeated, as if I hadn't heard him. The one registered under your name. We just need verbal confirmation for the new payment schedule. I don't have a business. I said, you must be mistaken. There was a pause. Then the sound of keys clicking. The system shows the account was opened 3 months ago. It lists you as the primary owner. My stomach dropped. What address do you have? He read out Sienna and Caleb's home address, not mine. I pressed a hand against my chest, willing my heartbeat to slow. I did not authorize this. I said quietly, I need that account frozen. Immediately. Of course, ma'am. We'll flag it. His tone softened. You may want to review your other linked services as well. When the call ended, I stared at the blank wall in front of me. My breathing came thin and uneven, like my lungs couldn't decide how much air they deserved. I dialed Sienna. She didn't pick up. I tried again. Straight to voicemail. Finally, she texted, What is it? Mom, Caleb is in a meeting. Make it quick. I typed slowly, fingers stiff. Did you or Caleb open a business utility account under my name? Her reply came instantly. Mom, don't start this again. Again, as if concern for my own identity was a hobby I pursued for entertainment. I called her. This time she answered with a sigh sharp enough to slice through the phone. Mom, you're being dramatic, she said. It's just temporary. Caleb's business had an issue with verification, so you used my name. My voice cracked, but I held it steady. We didn't think you'd mind, she said. It was either that or the whole project stalled. You know how much pressure Caleb is under. I never agreed to it. I whispered. Oh, please, she snapped. You've always helped. That's what you do. It's not a big deal, Mom. Not a big deal. My name, my credit, My trust. I need you to close that account. I said, today. Her silence held a layer of disbelief, like I had spoken in another language. Caleb already handled it. Just leave it alone. You're making something out of nothing. Something out of nothing. It was the same phrase she used 2 years ago, when I told her Caleb seemed distant, calculating. She laughed then too, brushed a hand through her hair, and said, Mom, stop. You always imagine problems. Back then, I swallowed it. Now, it lodged in me like a stone. Sienna, I said softly, you can't use my identity without permission. She clicked her tongue. You're overreacting. Caleb said you'd be supportive. I felt something tighten, not anger, not yet, but clarity. I won't be used like this anymore, I said. She scoffed. We really don't have time for your episodes today. Episodes? That word landed hard. I hung up before she could say anything else. The silence afterward felt heavy, but for the first time, it belonged to me. If my name had been taken this easily, my mind whispered. What else had they taken while I wasn't looking? I had barely finished replaying my call with Sienna when a soft knock came at my door. It wasn't hesitant. It was familiar. I opened it to find Harper standing there, arms wrapped around a tote bag, eyes scanning my face like she was bracing for impact. Aunt Eleanor, she said gently, can I come in? I stepped aside. Of course, what's wrong? She walked in, setting her tote on the table with a sigh that didn't belong to someone her age. Harper was 38, thoughtful, cautious, the kind of person who didn't show up unless something mattered. I heard some things, she said softly, and I didn't want to let another day go by without checking on you. My heart tightened. Did Sienna say something? Harper hesitated. Her hands twisted together before she finally met my eyes. She's been telling the family that you've been unstable. The word hit like a cold slap. Unstable. That you've been forgetting things. Imagining problems. Misinterpreting her and Caleb, Harper continued, her voice cracking with discomfort. She said you've been calling constantly, making accusations, and that it's been overwhelming. I felt the room tilt slightly. I called her yesterday about an account opened in my name without permission. That's it. I know, Harper whispered. That's why I'm here. None of what she said felt right. My breath came thin and shaky. She's been saying that behind my back, Harper nodded, for months. Actually, it started small little jokes. Comments about you being too emotional or misinformed. But recently, she's been painting a very different picture. I sat down slowly. Why would she do that? Harper bit her lip. I think Caleb feeds her the narrative. And she repeats it without thinking. People start believing the person who speaks the loudest. My chest tightened. I thought I was the one helping them, supporting them. You were, Harper said firmly. She sat beside me. But they've been twisting your kindness into something else. Something they can use. I pressed my hands together, trying to steady the trembling. She made it sound like I'm losing myself. Harper shook her head, her expression softening. You're not. I've known you my whole life. Aunt Eleanor, you're thoughtful, you're careful, you're grounded. Whatever story Sienna and Caleb are spreading, it's not the truth. I swallowed hard. You believe me. With everything I have, she said. Something in me cracked, then not in a way that broke, but in a way that revealed the raw center I had ignored for too long. The betrayal sat heavy, but beneath it, something firmer pulsed. A small, stubborn ember of anger, of clarity, of self-worth. I whispered. She really said I was unstable. Harper placed a hand on mine. They wanted to make sure no one listened to you if you ever spoke up. The tactic was painfully familiar, discredit the source. Then the truth loses its footing. I stared at the table as the realization rooted itself deep. Sienna used my silence as her shield. I murmured. She counted on me never telling anyone what I've carried. Harper nodded. You don't have to stay silent anymore. I breathed in slowly. Something inside me shifted again, small but unmistakable. Not rage, not despair, something steadier. Strength, a seed, small but alive, taking hold in the quiet of my apartment. I booked an appointment with Dr. Miriam Lawton the same evening. Harper left. It felt impulsive, almost reckless, but something inside me refused to spend another day drowning in old habits. When I walked into Dr. Miriam's office 2 mornings later, she looked up with a kind, curious smile. One of those smiles that made you feel seen without saying a word. "You must be Eleanor," she said gently. "Come in. Sit wherever you'd like." I sat on the armchair closest to the window, clutching my purse in my lap like it was a shield. "Thank you for seeing me so quickly," I said. "Of course," she replied. "Tell me what brought you here." The question was simple. Answering it was not, "My daughter cut me off." I began via text. She said she needed distance and told me to stop contacting her completely. Dr. Miriam nodded slowly, her hands resting calmly on her notebook. "And what did that text feel like to you?" I exhaled shakily, like losing her twice. Losing her, once when she drifted away, and again when she finally said the words. She didn't interrupt. It gave me room to continue. I raised Sienna alone. I said, her father left when she was 4. I worked non-stop double shifts. Summer jobs, anything to keep us going. And I kept helping her long after she became an adult. Mortgage overages, medical bills, private school tuition for her daughter. It never ended. "What did helping her mean to you, Doctor?" Miriam asked. "It meant I mattered," I said before I could stop myself. She tilted her head. "And if you didn't help, I worried she'd leave," I whispered, "or see me as a burden." There it was, laid bare. The fear I'd carried since her father walked out. A fear that Sienna had unknowingly learned how to use. Dr. Miriam leaned forward slightly. "Eleanor, it sounds like you've been giving more than support. You've been giving pieces of yourself away to stay needed." My throat tightened. "But isn't that what mothers do, loving your child?" she said softly. "Should not require sacrificing your identity." I pressed a hand to my chest. "I just don't want her to think I abandoned her." "You didn't abandon her," she said. "You enabled her to, and that's not the same thing." Her words struck something deep. I stared at my hands, the fingers trembling. "Caleb opened accounts under my name," I said quietly. "Utilities, business expenses, without telling me." "That is financial exploitation," she said. "And ending a financial entanglement isn't cruelty, it's survival." The sentence landed like truth, finally finding its rightful place. Survival. She let me breathe for a moment before continuing. "What would it look like for you to stop carrying what isn't yours?" I thought about the receipts piled in the drawer at home, the transfers I made automatically, the bills I paid without question. "I need to see everything clearly," I said. "Every dollar, every bill, every time I stepped in. That's a good start," she replied. When I got home, I pulled out the old shoebox I had used as my makeshift filing system. Receipts, bank statements, handwritten notes, years of quiet sacrifices, small and large, all mixed together. I spread them across the table, sorting them by category mortgage gaps, utilities, tuition, medical, Caleb's business emergencies. My hands moved slowly, almost ritualistic. For every slip of paper I placed in a pile, something inside me steadied. This wasn't just accounting. This was reclaiming the narrative of my own life. Line by line, number by number, I began seeing the truth I had ignored. Helping them had not been love, it had been fear. And for the first time in 70 years, I felt something brave rising underneath the fear, something I hadn't recognized in myself for a long time, a beginning. I spent the next day sorting everything with a determination I hadn't felt in years. The kitchen table disappeared under neat stacks of paper, each one marked with a colored sticky note: green for housing, yellow for utilities, blue for medical, pink for subscriptions, red for anything tied to Caleb's business. 7 years worth of my life, cataloged in ink and memory. I picked up the first green stack mortgage over ages. Each slip carried a date and my bank's stamp. $400 here, $600 there. Once, nearly $900. I whispered the numbers as if saying them aloud might make them smaller. It didn't. Next were the utilities. Most of them were small, $25 here, $50 there, but there were dozens. Entire months of water and electricity bills I had covered just to help. I moved on to the medical stack. I held up one receipt for nearly $2,000, Caleb's back injury, the one he said insurance would reimburse. They never did. And neither did he. A knot tightened in my stomach, but I forced myself to keep going. The subscriptions were the least expected online services. Monthly plans, premium apps. Some listed Sienna's email, others listed Caleb's. None listed mine. Yet every one of them had been paid by me. I picked up the red stack last, the one tied to Caleb's business emergencies. These receipts felt different. Larger, heavier. $2,500 for a temporary loan. Another $3,000 for equipment replacement. Several smaller charges for software and deliveries. My breath hitched as I looked at the totals lined up in front of me. I grabbed my own bank statement from last year and scanned the withdrawal column. The numbers dropped sharply, too sharply. My retirement account, the one I planned so carefully, had thinned by nearly $30,000 over 4 years. I felt the world shift underneath me. I hadn't realized. I should have realized. I sank into the chair, the papers blurring for a moment. The truth was no longer an abstract feeling. It was right there in front of me. Printed on white paper and stained with years of excuses, I had been their safety net. Their fallback. Their quiet solution to every crisis. Real or imagined. And they hadn't just used my help. They had depended on it. 70 years old, I murmured to myself. And I'm the one holding their house up, not the other way around. It wasn't anger that flooded me first. It was grief. A grief so deep, it felt like losing someone who had already been gone for a long time. I reached for the mortgage stack again, smoothing the edges. "This is my life," I whispered. All the parts I gave away so easily. The number of receipts didn't intimidate me anymore. They clarified something I had refused to see. The story they told wasn't about generosity. It was about being invisible, support beams in a house that never once acknowledged me. I gathered the stacks into a single folder, my movements deliberate. Steady. The foundation had always been me, and I had finally stopped pretending I wasn't tired. I spent the next morning turning my dining table into an evidence board. The folders were stacked neatly, each one organized by category, dates lined up like quiet witnesses. I opened my laptop and began scanning every document: receipts, bank statements, emails, even handwritten notes I had tucked away over the years. Each scan felt like reclaiming something I didn't know I'd lost. Halfway through the utilities folder, I paused. A form stared up at me, an application for a business energy account from 3 months earlier. My name was printed at the top, but the signature at the bottom wasn't mine. Not even close. My real signature looped gently. Soft cursive I'd been using since college. This one was sharp, rushed, almost jagged. Someone had practiced it, but not well. I whispered, "Caleb." Saying his name out loud steadied me. I took out a sheet from another folder, a rental application from years ago, where Sienna had asked me to co-sign. My signature flowed across the page the way it always did. I held the two papers side by side. The difference was undeniable. Just then, a knock interrupted me. When I opened the door, Harper stood outside with 2 coffees and that gentle concern she never tried to hide. "I figured you might need caffeine," she said. "Come in." I told her, "I found something." We sat at the table, and I placed the 2 documents in front of her. She studied them carefully, her brow tightening. "That's not your signature," she said. "This is forgery." I didn't want to believe it, I admitted. "But it's right there." Harper exhaled, steady but firm. "Aunt Eleanor, this is serious. You need to protect yourself." "I will," I said. "I'm done pretending it's normal." She nodded slowly. "Let's put everything together. Not to attack them, just to be factual, clear, unemotional." I appreciated the wording. Harper understood what I needed more than I did. We worked side by side for almost an hour. Harper helped me create a summary document, every expense listed neatly with dates, categories, and amounts. No accusations, no dramatic lines, just truth in plain text. At one point, she looked at me carefully. "How are you feeling?" I expected my voice to shake, but it didn't. "Calm," I said. It surprised me, the calmness. Not numbness, not despair, just a settled clarity. Like threads long tangled were finally loosening. Harper smiled softly. "That's new for you." "It is," I admitted. She touched my hand. "You're standing up for yourself. That's why it feels different." I saved the document and sat back. The receipts didn't overwhelm me anymore. They didn't scare me. They didn't make me feel naive or foolish. They made me feel prepared. Harper gathered her bag to leave, her eyes lingering on me for a moment longer. "Send the message when you're ready," she said, "and remember it's just the truth." After she left, I looked at the scanned folder glowing on my screen. 7 years of silence arranged into lines and figures. Not anger, not revenge, just truth. Steady and undeniable, waiting to be sent. I sat at my kitchen table the next morning with the folder open in front of me. The apartment was quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator, a small, steady sound that grounded me. I opened the family group chat. The same chat where birthdays were forgotten, but requests for money always came through loud and clear. My finger hovered over the camera icon for a moment. Then I took a slow breath and began attaching the photos, one for each category: housing, utilities, medical, subscriptions, Caleb's business expenses. Every receipt was clear, every date visible. I added one final image, the summary document Harper helped me prepare. Then I typed the message. "I am honoring your request for distance. Attached is a summary of payments I have made on your behalf. All financial assistance will end on the date circled." I sent it before I could second-guess myself. The screen stayed still for barely 3 seconds before it exploded. "Sienna, Mom, what is this supposed to mean?" "Caleb, money is not the same as family. You're being manipulative." "Sienna again. You know we're under pressure right now. Why would you do this to us?" I placed the phone down, letting their words sit on the table instead of settling in my chest. Then the panic started. The panic. "Sienna, what do you mean end? You can't just stop paying the utilities. June needs stability." "Caleb, Eleanor, respond. This is not acceptable." I stayed silent. The typing bubbles popped up again. "Sienna, are you really doing this?" After everything we've done for you, I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the audacity felt surreal. Another bubble appeared, this time from an aunt I hadn't seen in months. "Aunt Clarice, Eleanor, this is cruel. Sienna said you've been unstable. Is this another episode?" Then another. "Cousin Marla, we all know you exaggerated things. Caleb has always taken care of Sienna. Why are you trying to hurt them?" The words felt familiar, echoes of a story I hadn't been told but clearly had been shared. Sienna's story. Caleb's story. They weren't yelling in my living room, but the noise on the screen felt just as loud. I locked the phone and stood up. My heart wasn't racing. My hands didn't shake. I felt steady, like the ground beneath me finally belonged to me again. The phone buzzed over and over on the table. Sienna, Mom, answer me. You can't just do this. Aunt Clarice. Ignoring family is abusive. You know, Caleb, you're embarrassing yourself. Fix this before it gets worse. Then Sienna sent an audio message. Her voice trembled between anger and desperation. Mom, please just tell me this is a misunderstanding. Caleb is furious. You're acting like you're being taken advantage of. And it's humiliating. We didn't ask you to go this far. Call me back. Her breathing hitched at the end. A sound I had heard when she was young and scared of thunderstorms. But now it was different, shaped by entitlement, not fear. I didn't press play a second time. More notifications piled in. Another aunt, a cousin, even Caleb's mother chimed in, telling me I should behave my age. I turned the phone face down. Their voices swarmed the room like bees desperate to sting something. But nothing in me felt soft or unprotected anymore. The truth was out. The receipts were sent. The silence was intentional, not forced. And for the first time since Sienna's exile text, I felt entirely, undeniably in control. Nate showed up just after noon, knocking softly the way he always did. When I opened the door, he lifted his hand in a small wave, his gray eyebrows raised with concern. Harper called me. He said you might need help carrying a few things in. A few things, I echoed, stepping aside. More than I expected. The boxes sat just inside my doorway. Caleb had dropped them off without a word that morning. Nate crouched beside the first one and read the label written in Caleb's sharp handwriting. Kitchen, he said. You ready? As ready as I'll ever be. He peeled the tape back. Inside lay the small stainless steel mixer I had bought Sienna 3 Christmases ago, still wrapped in its original plastic. Nate held it up gently. Brand new. I swallowed. She said she needed it for baking. I thought it would make things easier for her. She never opened it. He said. He didn't say it with judgment. Just quiet truth. We moved to the next box. Nate pushed aside packing paper and revealed a stack of towels thick, soft ones I'd chosen in Sienna's favorite shade of blue. Each was still folded with the manufacturer's tag intact. I gave her these after June was born, I said, touching one lightly. She told me they were perfect. Nate didn't answer right away. He just set them aside carefully, as if their newness felt heavier than their worth. He opened the third box. My breath caught. Inside were birthday cards I had written over the years, some sealed, some opened, but unread, the envelopes crisp and whole. A porcelain figurine I had chosen on a trip to Cannon Beach, a framed picture of Sienna at age 7 with a missing front tooth. Gifts meant to be memories, untouched, unwanted. Nate lifted the frame. She didn't even take the wrapping off. I pressed my palms against the edge of the box, grounding myself. These weren't just things, Nate. They were pieces of me, little moments I thought we shared. He set the picture down gently beside me. I'm sorry, Eleanor. I nodded, though the motion hurt. I don't think she ever meant to keep them. I whispered, I think she put them away and forgot them the moment I left the room. That doesn't mean they didn't matter. He said. I looked at him, and for a moment, the shame I'd been carrying cracked open into something else, something sharper. She didn't forget. Nate. She never saw them as anything more than objects, just like she saw me. He stayed quiet, letting the truth settle on its own. I reached into the last box and pulled out a card Sienna had written when she was a teenager. You're the best mom in the world. it said in loopy handwriting. Beneath it, in the tiny print of adulthood, were all the unopened gifts I'd sent since. Nate rested a hand on my shoulder. You were never invisible to the right people, he said. His voice steadied me more than I expected. I looked around at the boxes neat, untouched, returned like a shipment that never met expectations. The realization rose slowly, painfully, but without the confusion that used to blur everything. I had not been part of their life. I had been part of their budget. I closed the last box with a quiet, decisive push, and for the first time, I wondered what part of myself I might finally be ready to see again. My phone lit up before sunrise. I hadn't touched it since sending the receipts, but the notifications stacked in a frantic column across the screen. The first was a voice message from Sienna, 42 seconds long. I played it. Mom, what are you doing? Her voice cracked on the first word. This isn't funny. You blindsided us. Caleb is furious. You should have talked to us instead of whatever that message was. Another message arrived before I finished listening to the first. You're overreacting. This is extreme. We just needed space. Not. Her breath hitched. Not financial punishment. You're making us look bad. Her tone swung like a pendulum anger. Then fear. Then annoyance. Then soft pleading. The third message dropped the softness entirely. Caleb says you might be violating some kind of family responsibility clause. He's considering legal options. So call me back and fix this before it goes any further. A responsibility clause. I almost laughed. Caleb had once told me he didn't believe in anything he couldn't calculate. Now he was inventing laws to scare a 70-year-old because I stopped paying his bills. Another voice message buzzed through. Mom, I'm serious. You can't just stop paying things without notice. June's school will call us today. This is going to be humiliating. I sat back in my chair and listened to the storm unfold. By 8 in the morning, the tone changed again. Mom, please. Caleb and I had no idea you were this fragile. You should have told us you were feeling overwhelmed. This is all a misunderstanding. Just call me. Fragile. The word stung, but it didn't pull me under. Not anymore. I set the phone aside and made tea, letting their panic settle in the background. Steam rose quietly from the cup as another message came in, this one from Caleb himself. You have caused financial damage. If you do not reinstate payments today, I will take formal action. This is your last warning. I didn't respond. A minute later, do you really want to force us into court? Think carefully. The threat was thin, empty, desperate. They had never imagined a world where my bank card wasn't an extension of their own. By noon, the cracks began to show. Sienna's texts shifted from anger to details she should have been telling Caleb. Not me. They're shutting off the internet later today. June's tuition portal says the payment bounced. What do I do? Caleb says the business software isn't renewing. He needs access by tonight. Each message revealed another dependency I hadn't even realized existed. Then came the smallest, saddest message of all, Mom. I thought you were on our side. I closed my eyes. My hands didn't shake. My breath stayed steady. The words hurt, but not in the way they used to. This wasn't an open wound anymore. It was a scar forming over truth. I picked up the phone and turned on Do Not Disturb. Their panic was no longer mine to absorb. Their consequences were no longer mine to cushion. I sat quietly, feeling the strange, liberating weight of silence fill the room. If they had pushed me out, then stepping fully back wasn't abandonment. It was finally accepting the place they'd put me in long before they ever admitted it aloud. The next morning, I walked into the bank with my documents in a folder pressed tight against my chest. The lobby was quiet. The kind of quiet that used to make me nervous, like everyone would hear my voice shake if I asked for help. But my steps felt steady. A teller with warm eyes greeted me. How can we help? Today I need to speak with someone about unauthorized accounts. I said, And I need to remove several names from my financial authorizations. She nodded and led me to a small office where a man in his 50s introduced himself as Robert Kent, senior advisor. "What's going on, Ms. Grant?" he asked. I handed him the first stack of papers, Caleb's fraudulent utility account, the signatures that weren't mine, proof of withdrawals I never made. These accounts were opened under my name without my permission. I said, "I want them closed, and I want every authorization connected to these people removed." He scanned the pages carefully. His brow tightened. "This signature isn't yours, huh?" "No, it is not." "And the utility charges, these were routed through your checking?" "Yes." He looked up. "Ms. Grant, this is serious. I'll initiate a fraud review immediately." His tone didn't make me feel afraid. It made me feel seen. "While we're at it," I said, opening another folder, "please remove my daughter, Sienna Whitlock, and her husband, Caleb Whitlock, from all accounts where they have any secondary access." He nodded. "We'll change every authorization today. Only you will have access." I breathed in slowly. Good. When he finished the security changes, he printed a list of every active subscription tied to my accounts. "You should review these," he said. "Some look unusual." Unusual was putting it lightly. There were nearly 15 recurring charges software for Caleb's business, online tools with names I didn't recognize, and 2 premium accounts under emails that weren't mine. I stared at the list. "These aren't me." "You want them canceled?" Robert asked. "All of them," I said. He clicked through the screen. Each cancellation a soft tap of his keyboard. Tap, 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 with every confirmation. A weight lifted from a place I didn't realize had been carrying so much. When we finished, he folded his hands. "Ms. Grant, I'd like to schedule a separate appointment, a full review of your retirement accounts. Just to make sure everything is protected. I'd appreciate that." He looked at me with something like admiration. "You're doing the right thing. Not everyone comes in before things get worse." My throat tightened. "Things have already been worse," I said quietly. "I'm just not letting them stay that way." He handed me a folder with updated documents, new security settings, new account listings. Everything clean and precise. "Your name is fully secure now. No one but you has access." I held the folder like something fragile, though it wasn't. It was strength printed on paper. On my way out, I stopped at the bench near the entrance and read through the final list of cancellations. Each one felt like reclaiming a small piece of myself. One subscription, $58 a month for Caleb's premium business suite. Another $29 for a software tool. A third $65 for a cloud backup account I didn't recognize. All gone, all severed. When I stepped outside, the air felt different, not lighter, not brighter, but mine. My name was mine again. My accounts were mine again. My life, piece by piece, was coming back under my hands. And for the first time in a long time, freedom didn't feel abstract. It felt factual, documented, printed, signed, written in ink. It started quietly, always does in a city like Portland. One neighbor told another. A friend mentioned something in passing. Then a coworker added a detail they probably shouldn't repeat. None of it came from me. I had stayed silent since the day I sent the receipts. But truth has a way of moving on its own legs. Nate stopped by one afternoon with a bag of groceries and a look that told me he'd heard something. "There's talk going around," he said gently. "What kind of talk?" He set the bag down and scratched the back of his neck. "Someone mentioned an audit at Caleb's company. Something about mismatched names on their billing accounts." My chest tightened. "That would be the fraudulent utilities," I said quietly. Nate nodded. "A client pulled out of a contract. Apparently, they don't like dealing with companies that use unusual financial arrangements." He didn't say it with satisfaction, just plain fact. I appreciated that. The consequences were theirs. not his to celebrate. Later that week, Harper called. "Was this so, Aunt Eleanor?" she said. "I just got off the phone with a friend who works near Caleb. People are whispering. They think he's been using other people's names to prop up his business." "That's exactly what he was doing," I replied. And Sienna Harper hesitated. She's been disinvited from 3 social events. Her friends say they need space until things settle, the same words she had once thrown at me. I didn't point it out. I heard Harper sigh. I don't know if she realizes it yet, but this is fallout. A word heavy enough to feel like its own presence in the room. 2 days later, I ran into a woman named Lila at the grocery store, Sienna's old friend. Someone who had once been polite in that stiff, distant way that made you feel observed rather than greeted. "Eleanor," she said, adjusting her sunglasses though we were indoors, "I hope you're doing all right." "I'm fine," I replied. She cleared her throat. "I heard about, well, everything. I didn't know the situation was so complicated. Neither did I." I said. Lila shifted her weight. "People are talking. Caleb's name is coming up a lot lately. People will talk," I said. She nodded awkwardly and rolled her card away. The conversation was short, but the message was clear. Their perfect image, carefully curated, tightly polished, was cracking. That evening, Harper texted again. Harper Sienna tried to join a volunteer event today, and someone mentioned the audit. She walked out in tears. I stared at the message. Not out of anger, but something quieter, an ache that came from knowing how much she had invested in the illusion of success. Image had always been her shield, and now the shield had holes. I received no apology, no explanation, no attempt to make things right, only silence. Silence from Sienna, silence from Caleb, silence from the people who had been so loud in the group chat days earlier. Silence can mean many things: avoidance, shame, stubbornness. But this kind felt like a wall built quickly, sloppily, in panic. The next morning, I sat by the window with my tea. The street outside was ordinary cars passing, neighbors chatting, a dog barking somewhere. But I felt a shift beneath it all, something subtle but undeniably real. They were the ones drowning now. Not because of me, but because the image they had worked so hard to protect could not survive the truth underneath it. I didn't gloat. I didn't rejoice. I just sat there, feeling the strange calm of someone who no longer needed to carry a story that never belonged to her in the first place. I had just finished washing my breakfast mug when a sudden, frantic knock rattled my front door. Not gentle, not polite, a desperate knocking that carried the harsh edge of someone unraveling. I dried my hands slowly, my heart steady, not racing the way it once would have. When I opened the door, Sienna stood there, hair undone, mascara smudged under her eyes, breathing in sharp, uneven bursts. "Mom," she choked out. Please let me in." I stepped aside without a word. She walked past me like her legs barely remembered how to hold her weight. When she turned to face me, tears spilled over. "This is all falling apart," she sobbed. "You don't understand what you've done." My spine straightened. "Sit down," I said softly. She dropped onto the couch, clutching a tissue like it was the only solid thing left in her life. I sat across from her, leaving space between us. "Mom, I never meant for things to get this bad." Her voice shook violently. "People are talking. Caleb is furious. The school called. The bank called. His business partner walked away. Everyone thinks we're irresponsible." I kept my voice even. "You dismissed me before you understood what I carried." She flinched. I was overwhelmed. "Caleb said you were being dramatic. He said you were doing this to control us. And you believed him." "I didn't want to," she whispered. "But I don't know. He made it sound like you were attacking us." I leaned forward. "Sending you the receipts was not an attack. It was the truth. She wiped her nose, staring at her lap. We depended on you. Mom, you know that. Dependence is not the same as entitlement. Her breath caught. I didn't mean to hurt you. You did. A sob tore out of her. I know. She looked up at me, then really looked, and something in her expression cracked open, raw and unguarded. I can't do this alone, she whispered. Caleb. He's putting everything on me now. He says it's my fault your money stopped. He says I pushed you too hard. I watched her carefully. Did he pressure you to send that message to use my accounts? She hesitated too long. Her jaw tensed. He suggested it, she admitted. He said you wouldn't mind, that you'd always helped before. He said it was temporary. He said that if I didn't set boundaries, you'd never stop interfering. So he encouraged you. She nodded. And you agreed. Her eyes filled again. I'm sorry, Mom. I breathed in slowly. Caleb's influence doesn't erase what you chose. You typed that message. You let him open accounts under my name. You let people think I was unstable. You didn't defend me. Not once. Her shoulders folded inward. I know, she whispered. I was wrong. I was selfish. I was scared. And what are you now? She shook her head helplessly, falling apart. We sat in silence. The kind that sharpens rather than softens. After a long moment, she leaned forward, reaching for my hand like she used to when she was small. Mom, help me fix this, please. My heart twisted old instinct, old love, old patterns. But I didn't move, so I didn't reach back. I can't rescue you from consequences, I said gently. Not anymore. She blinked, confused, almost offended. You're my mother, and I love you, I said quietly. But love is not a substitute for responsibility. Her breath stuttered. So you're just going to let me drown? No, Sienna. I'm going to let you learn to swim. She broke then, crying with a force that shook her whole body. Not delicate tears, deep ones. The kind that come when the truth finally outweighs the excuses. I handed her a tissue, nothing more. When she finally lifted her face again, eyes swollen and exhausted, she whispered, I don't know how to fix what I broke. I held her gaze. Not everything needs forgiveness to begin healing. Some things need accountability. She nodded slowly, as if the word itself hurt. When she left an hour later, her shoulders were slumped, her steps unsteady. But there was something different in her silence, a recognition she had never given me before. I closed the door gently. Healing wouldn't come from pretending the hurt never happened. It would come from no longer pretending I owed her the pieces she broke. The first update came from Harper. I was folding laundry when my phone buzzed. Her name lit up the screen. Aunt Eleanor. She said as soon as I answered, Are you sitting down? I can be... I set the towel aside and sat at the edge of the bed. What happened? There was an internal review at Caleb's company, she said. The mismatched accounts triggered it. They found several invoices tied to your name and cross-checked them with your fraud report at the bank. I closed my eyes for a moment. And they cut ties with him. She said, No more contracts, no references, officially. They called it breach of trust in financial practices. Off the record, my friend said no one wants to touch his business right now. I let the words settle. Not with satisfaction, just with a quiet acknowledgement that cause and effect still existed in the world. Thank you for telling me, I said. There's more, Harper added, voice softer. He is facing penalties. Not criminal, not yet, but enough to hit him where it hurts. I nodded to myself. His pocket and his ego, she exhaled. Exactly. The second update came a week later, this time from Nate. We were sitting on the bench outside our building, sharing a thermos of tea. Ran into Sienna at the grocery store, he said. She was wearing a name tag. I turned to look at him. A name tag. He nodded. She took a job at one of those upscale home stores downtown. Part-time, for now. But she looked lost. I pictured her behind a counter, ringing up other people's purchases with the polished smile she used to reserve for her own. Something ached in my chest, but it was not the old guilt. It was something closer to mourning for the version of her that might have existed if we had all made different choices. What did she say? I asked. She saw me. He replied. She froze. Then she asked how you were. What did you tell her? The truth. He said, I told her you were taking care of yourself. I watched a pair of joggers pass by on the sidewalk. Did she look angry? No. He said, she looked tired. The third update came from Sienna herself. It was evening when she texted. Not a long message, not an apology, just a single line. Caleb is blaming me for everything. I stared at the screen. After a moment, another message came. He says if I had kept you under control, none of this would have happened. I typed slowly. He made his own choices. So did you. Her response took longer this time. He yelled for an hour, said I ruined our life. Then he slept on the couch. There it was, cracks laid bare in plain text. I thought carefully before replying. You built a life on money that was never promised. Now you are seeing what it stands on without it. No dots appeared. No answer came back. Days later, Harper called again. They are barely speaking to each other. She said quietly, Caleb is scrambling to find new clients. Sienna is working extra shifts. They are fighting constantly. And June, I asked. She is confused, Harper said. But she has teachers who care. And she still has you, whether they admit it or not. My throat tightened. I won't drag her into this mess. She deserves better than that. You are better than that, Harper said. There were moments when the old instinct flared. When I heard about late notices piling up at their door or saw Sienna's car parked outside a second job, a part of me wanted to step in. To fix, to soften the blow. But then I remembered standing on that porch surrounded by my own boxes, her text glowing on my screen, the words asking for distance like I was a nuisance to be cleared away. I had honored that request. Now I was honoring my own. One evening, as the sun dipped low, I sat with Dr. Miriam in her office again. She listened while I described the fallout. How do you feel? Hearing all this, she asked. I feel steady. I said, not happy, not vindictive, just steady. She nodded. That is what boundaries often feel like when they finally take root. I keep waiting for the guilt to drag me back. I admitted, it flickers sometimes, but it does not stay. You spent decades believing their survival depended on your sacrifice, she said. Now you are seeing that their lives continue without your help, even if they are forced to adjust. That is not your failure. That is their reality. I exhaled, slow and controlled. They are angry. They think I betrayed them. Did you? She asked. I met her eyes. No. She smiled gently. Then let them have their anger. You have your truth. When I walked home that evening, the city felt unchanged, same streets, same buildings, same murmurs of traffic. But something inside me had shifted far enough that I could not imagine going back. They had become different people without my silence. So had I. And as I unlocked my own door with my own key, carrying groceries paid for with my own card, I felt a quiet, solid certainty about one thing, whatever they chose to do next. I no longer existed to break their fall. Harper insisted on cooking. I tried to protest, but she waved a wooden spoon at me like a traffic baton and said, sit, rest. Let me take care of you for once, Aunt Eleanor. So I sat. Nate arrived 20 minutes later with a bag of bakery rolls and a grin that deepened the creases around his eyes. Thought we could use something warm, he said. Harper burns bread. I do not burn bread, Harper called from the stove. She burns bread, he whispered. I smiled, a small one, but real. Years ago, I would have been too busy tending to someone else's needs to notice moments like this. But tonight, I let myself belong without earning it. When dinner was ready, the three of us sat around my table, bowls of stew steaming, rolls stacked high in the center. Harper talked about work. Nate told a story about a neighbor's runaway dog. I added comments where I wanted no pressure, no apologies. Halfway through the meal, Harper glanced at me. You look lighter, she said. I feel lighter, I admitted. Your shoulders used to curl in. Nate added, now they're straight. You stand like someone who owns herself. I set my spoon down slowly, letting the words land. I didn't know how much I'd been carrying. Harper reached across the table and squeezed my hand. We did. After dinner, they helped wash dishes, even though I protested. And even though Harper insisted the water temperature builds character, when they finally left, the apartment felt warm, not empty. The quiet no longer felt like abandonment. It felt chosen. The next morning, I began a new routine, not dramatic, not ambitious, just mine. I walked around Laurelhurst Park, slow but steady. The air was crisp, and my legs ached, but I kept going. I breathed deeper than I had in months. Later, I went to the library, the same place where I once shelved books during long nights as a young mother, and asked if they needed volunteers. The director smiled. We always need help, she said, especially from people who love books the way you clearly do. So I started coming in twice a week, sorting returns, guiding children toward stories that fit their imaginations, cataloging new arrivals. It wasn't paid work, it wasn't glamorous, but it was meaningful, and it was mine. During my next session with Dr. Miriam, she studied me for a moment before saying anything. You're carrying yourself differently, she observed. Not protecting your heart, just inhabiting it. I smiled at that. I didn't think it was possible at my age to feel new. It is not new, she corrected gently. It is reclaimed. We spent the hour talking about the small shifts, how silence felt peaceful instead of punishing, how walking alone no longer felt like exile, how saying no didn't tighten my chest anymore. You have room now, she said. What will you fill it with? I didn't answer immediately, not because I didn't know, but because I finally had time to decide. In the evenings, I sometimes sat on my balcony with a cup of tea, watching the streetlights flicker on. Neighbors walked dogs. Kids rode scooters. Somewhere down the block, someone always played old jazz records around dusk. I listened without reaching for my phone, without waiting for an emergency call, without wondering what bill needed paying next. One night, Harper texted, "Are we still on for Saturday breakfast?" I typed back. "Of course, I'm bringing scones." Minutes later, Nate sent a separate message. "You need me to pick you up," I replied. "No, I'll walk." I set the phone aside and felt something settle quietly in my chest, a sense of steadiness I had not known in years. These were the people who stayed, not because they needed me, not because they depended on me, not because I paid for anything. They stayed because they cared. As the night deepened and the street quieted, I thought about the long years I had given away, the ones I spent shrinking to fit inside other people's expectations. Those years were gone. But the ones ahead, the ones I had reclaimed, were mine, and for the first time, I was ready to decide what to do with them. The official audit wrapped sooner than anyone expected. I sat in the financial advisor's office when the final email came through, a clean, concise summary from the investigators. Every fraudulent account tied to my name had been confirmed. Every unauthorized charge documented. Every misuse of my identity traced back to one person, Caleb Whitlock. Robert, the advisor, read the report twice before looking up. "Ms. Grant, This is extensive, I know, I said softly. His business will face penalties. He continued, some fines, possibly restrictions. And any contracts that used your information even indirectly will be voided. I folded my hands in my lap. So it's done. He nodded. It's done. There was no triumph in me, no rush of vindication, just a quiet, steady exhale, like a weight I had carried for years had finally slid off my shoulders. When I stepped out into the hallway, my phone buzzed again. I knew the rhythm of those notifications too well. Sienna had been trying to reach me for days. I hadn't responded. This time, she sent a single text. "Mom, I need you, please." I leaned against the wall and read it twice. The words weren't an apology, they were a plea shaped by fear, panic, and the sudden loss of the financial scaffolding she'd mistaken for love. A second message arrived. "Caleb says this is all your fault. He says you ruined him. I don't know what to do." And a third, "Mom, answer me. Please. I'm begging you." My heart tightened, but not in the way it used to. Not with guilt. Not with the instinct to run toward her pain. This time, it tightened around a truth I had earned. She asked for distance, and I was finally strong enough to honor it. I typed slowly, deliberately. Each word an anchor. You asked for space. I'm respecting that. Take care of yourself. Sienna. Then I turned the phone off. The next morning, I walked to the bank and opened a new account. The teller handed me the paperwork with a warm smile. "Everything is in your name alone," she said. "Secure, private, independent, independent." The words settled into me like a new heartbeat. I signed the final form, pressed my pen into the paper with steady fingers, and felt the moment root itself deep inside me. This wasn't just a bank account. It was a line drawn. A door closed. A door opened. When I stepped outside, the air felt crisp, cool, honest. I walked down the sidewalk without checking my phone, without waiting for a demand, without bracing for a catastrophe that wasn't mine to fix. Later that evening, Nate and Harper came over with takeout. We ate around my little table again, laughing at something ridiculous Nate said about mispronouncing quinoa at a dinner party. Harper leaned back in her chair. "You look peaceful," she said. "I feel peaceful," I answered. After they left, I stood on my balcony, watching the streetlights flicker on. I thought about the boxes Caleb pushed onto the porch, the text Sienna typed without hesitation, the years I spent bending myself into shapes that never fit. And I thought about who I had become since letting go. No revenge, no bitterness, just truth and distance finally used for healing instead of punishment. I whispered the words aloud. More for myself than anyone else, they thought distance would punish me, but distance saved me. Before going inside, I recorded a small message for anyone who might be listening someday. If you've had to walk away from someone you love just to save the parts of yourself they never cared to see, you're not alone. Tell me where you're listening from. And if my story meant something to you, don't forget to like, comment, or subscribe. Your stories matter too. Then I turned off the balcony light, closed the door gently, and stepped into the life I had reclaimed one quiet, steady breath at a time.